Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Subscribe for more interesting videos. Thank you. Here as the story begins. The ship drifted in silence between the stars, its engines humming like a distant predator's growl. The corridors, though brightly lit, carried a tension thicker than recycled air. Captain Rorvak's clawed hands tapped against the command chair as his eyes swept over the crew, each of them working in hushed tones, as though any louder word might summon something unwelcome. He had commanded war fleets against raiders, navigated ion storms, and held the loyalty of soldiers hardened by years of combat, yet now his ship quivered with whispers. The whispers were of a predator. Sergeant Vector stood near the bulkhead, towering over most of the crew with his broad shoulders and armored hide. His voice, when he spoke, carried an edge honed from paranoia and certainty. "It leaves marks," he muttered, pushing a data slate toward Rorvak. Scratches cut into the metal walls of the cargo bay, long, deliberate gouges as if something had tested its claws. Not an accident. Not corrosion. Something is here. Rorvak's mandibles clicked. He wanted to dismiss it as foolishness, yet the evidence lay in the slate's glow. This was not the first oddity. Rations had been shredded rather than stolen, a security officer had vanished on patrol, and crew had begun claiming they heard something breathing in the dark when no one else was present. Each event by itself could be explained away, but together they birthed a narrative the crew could not ignore. At the edge of the bridge sat Dr. Kale Marrick, the only human on board. His posture was quiet, relaxed, as though none of this weighed on him. He had been assigned as a liaison scientist, studying xenobiology under the protection of Rorvak's vessel, but he seemed out of place in the tense air. While others fidgeted and whispered, Kale simply observed, his sharp eyes tracing over every movement, every shift in tone. "You think this ship holds an intruder?" Kale asked finally, his voice calm, cutting through the murmurs. Vector snarled, glaring at him. "We don't think. We know. Something hunts us. Perhaps you do not understand human. You come from a world so violent the galaxy calls it Deathworld. Perhaps you welcome such madness." Kale didn't flinch. His lips curved in the faintest trace of amusement, though his words carried no mockery. "I welcome order, Sergeant. If there's something here, then we should focus on evidence, not superstition." The crew shifted uneasily at his tone. For all their fear, none dared speak against Vector. Yet this soft-skinned human did, without tremor in his voice. Rorvak studied Kale, noting again the peculiar steadiness that surrounded him. Where others panicked, the human seemed carved from stillness. That night cycle, the tension thickened further. Patrols combed the maintenance shafts. Vector led a squad through the shadowed corridors, every step echoing as though announcing prey to hunter. The squad returned with nothing, though one soldier swore he saw a pair of eyes in the dark, low to the ground, gleaming. His weapon fire struck only metal. In the mess hall, the crew gathered in clusters, whispering. Stories of Deathworlders spread among them like wildfire. One alien recounted a tale of a human soldier who tore through a dozen warriors in hand-to-hand combat. Another spoke of humans surviving poisons that killed entire colonies. Every word made Kale's presence at the edge of the hall heavier, though he ate quietly as though detached from their gossip. Captain Rorvak tried to quell the unrest. He ordered routine maintained, drills executed, but discipline frayed. Fear grew legs in shadowed corners. Even seasoned soldiers flinched at creaks of the ship's hull. Then came the disappearance. Ensign Jorel, young but steady, failed to return from his patrol. His locator beacon was found discarded on the floor of Deck 7, the casing cracked as though crushed by enormous force. No blood, no remains, just silence where he had been. Vector slammed a fist against the wall when the report came in. "It stalks us, takes us one by one. And still you say superstition?" His accusing eyes fell on Kale, who was present at the briefing. Kale leaned forward, fingers interlocked. His tone remained level, but his words struck with precision. "It leaves no trace. That suggests intelligence. A creature without reason would have left blood, fragments, chaos. This is different. This is careful. Purposeful. And what do you suggest?" Rorvak asked, his voice strained between anger and unease. "That you're not hunting an animal," Kale replied softly. His eyes lingered on Vector for a fraction longer than necessary, and though his tone carried no threat, the sergeant's jaw tightened. The silence that followed pressed against them like the weight of the stars themselves. Whispers spread again through the corridors. Some claimed the predator wasn't an intruder at all, but a member of the crew. Others muttered that the Deathworlder among them carried secrets of his own. Paranoia bred suspicion, and suspicion sharpened like a blade. That cycle ended with the ship dimming into night mode, the crew on edge, rifles at the ready. Somewhere in the labyrinth of metal halls, something moved unseen. Somewhere among them, a predator lingered, whether alien or human none could yet say. Cale sat alone in his quarters, the faint light casting shadows over his face. He closed his eyes, listening as if the hum of the ship spoke to him. Somewhere beyond the walls, another crew member patrolled, fearful and alert. Somewhere in the silence, footsteps faltered, then ceased altogether. The whispers would not stop. And the first true disappearance had only just begun. The corridors echoed with marching boots as the hunt began. Captain Rorvac ordered full sweeps of the vessel, his voice sharp as a blade. No corner would remain unchecked, no shadow left unsearched. The crew moved in teams of 3, rifles raised, nerves coiled tight. Rumor had become reality with the disappearance of Ensign Jorel, and fear now guided every step. Sergeant Vector led the largest squad, his every movement radiating barely contained aggression. He barked commands, his harsh tone meant to drown the fear gnawing at his men. His eyes, though, betrayed unease. He wanted the predator found, wanted it cornered and slain, if only to still the whispering that plagued the ship. Cale Marrick walked with a smaller group, his presence as unsettling as the silence between footsteps. The others regarded him with suspicion, their gazes darting toward him when they thought he wasn't watching. He carried no weapon save for a simple sidearm, a pitiful thing compared to the rifles of his companions. Yet there was something in the way he held himself, shoulders loose, gaze steady, footsteps soundless, that unnerved them more than if he'd been armed to the teeth. The first body was discovered in the maintenance shaft above the engine room. Private Corps' remains lay sprawled against the bulkhead, eyes wide, throat crushed in a single precise strike. No weapon fire, no sign of struggle. Just one silent, efficient kill. The crew recoiled, muttering prayers to whatever deities they followed. Vector bent over the corpse, his heavy breath steaming in the cold air. "This is no beast," he growled. "This is an execution." Cale crouched nearby, studying the body with clinical detachment. He traced a gloved finger near the bruised throat, noting the placement of the strike, the precision. "One blow," he said softly. "No wasted effort. Whoever, or whatever, did this knew exactly where to strike." "Speak plain, human," Vector snapped. Cale's eyes lifted, sharp and unblinking. "You're not dealing with instinct. You're dealing with intention." The words rippled through the squad, tightening their fear. Intention meant intelligence. Intelligence meant an enemy that planned, chose, and stalked them with purpose. 2 hours later, another body was found. This time in a supply corridor, chest pierced clean through by something sharp enough to breach armor. Again no gunfire. Again silence. The predator seemed to move with eerie foresight, striking isolated patrols, vanishing before alarms could be raised. By the third attack, panic bloomed. Crew members refused to patrol without larger numbers. Some demanded they retreat to the central chambers and barricade themselves until help could arrive. Rorvac silenced them with a commander's authority, but even his voice wavered beneath the weight of growing dread. Vector's suspicions grew more venomous with each corpse. He watched Cale with open hostility, noting the human's calmness when others trembled. "Why do you not fear?" he hissed during one heated exchange in the mess hall. "Do you not understand what stalks us?" Cale met his glare without flinching. "I understand better than most. Fear doesn't keep you alive. Awareness does. Panic kills quicker than claws or fangs." His words, cool and measured, only fueled the unease. That cycle, Cale joined another search party. They moved through the lower decks, flashlights cutting narrow beams into the dark. The air was heavy with recycled metallic tang, every hiss of venting steam sounding like a predator's breath. Suddenly the lights flickered. Darkness swallowed them whole. A scream tore through the black, cut off in a strangled gasp. Shots fired blindly, sparks dancing against walls. When emergency lights stuttered back to life, another soldier lay dead, throat slit so clean it could have been done by a surgeon. The survivors staggered back, wild-eyed, weapons shaking. Cale remained still, scanning the corridor with unnerving composure. His eyes lingered on the shadows where nothing moved, as if expecting them to part. Later, in the briefing chamber, chaos erupted. Aliens shouted over one another, demanding answers. Some accused the captain of incompetence. Others whispered that the predator was invisible, untouchable. A bolder few muttered that perhaps it was no intruder at all, but one of their own. And each time the whispers rose, eyes flicked toward Cale. Rorvac slammed a fist against the table, silencing them. "Enough. We will find this thing. We will not tear ourselves apart before it does the work for us. His words steadied the crew for a moment, but suspicion remained, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. Vector leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. The predator hides in plain sight. We must root it out. Even if that means questioning the human. Cale didn't speak. He only watched, his calm gaze meeting the sergeant's with quiet defiance. It was not the look of a prey animal cornered by hunters. It was the look of something that understood exactly where it stood in the chain of survival. That night cycle ended with guards posted at every door, rifles loaded, eyes wide with sleepless vigilance. Yet still, somewhere in the ship's veins, another scream rang out before silence reclaimed it. The predator had struck again. And this time, the whispers no longer questioned whether it lurked among them. They began to insist. The ship had become a cage of suspicion. Every corner echoed with murmured fears, every glance held accusation. Captain Rorvac tried to enforce order, but discipline unraveled like a frayed rope. The predator's trail was a series of silences, patrols cut down without a sound, bodies left as grim reminders that no one was safe. The crew no longer whispered, they shouted, demanded, argued. Yet beneath their anger, terror roared. Sergeant Vector was the loudest voice of all. He marched into the briefing chamber, slamming his claws against the table so hard the metal rang. His eyes burned with bloodshot fury. Enough wandering in circles. The predator is not an intruder. It is among us, hiding in our ranks. We are being toyed with, and I will not stand by while more of my men vanish. The crew muttered in agreement, their gazes flicking toward the solitary figure at the end of the table. Dr. Cale Marrick sat with hands folded neatly, expression unreadable. He did not shift under the weight of their suspicion. His stillness only made him seem more alien to them than they were to him. Rorvac raised a hand for silence. You accuse without evidence, Vector. Our duty is to remain united until we have certainty. Division will only hasten our deaths. Vector leaned forward, his voice a low growl. Certainty is staring you in the face, Captain. The human. He walks through this storm of death without flinching. He speaks of intention, of methods, as though he knows them firsthand. Look at him, calm when all others tremble. That is not courage. That is familiarity. The chamber's air grew heavy. Eyes locked on Cale, expecting denial, protest, fear. But the human only tilted his head, studying the sergeant as though he were the subject of a quiet experiment. His voice, when it came, was soft but edged with steel. You mistake composure for guilt. If panic is the measure of innocence, then perhaps I should scream with the rest of you. A ripple of unease passed through the crew. His words were not defensive. They were precise, calculated, almost surgical. Vector bared his teeth. Then tell us, human, where were you when the lights failed on deck 4? Where were you when Private Core's throat was crushed? Cale's eyes did not waver. With your men. Surrounded. Convenient for me to kill while in plain sight, isn't it? His lips curved in a faint smile that made several officers shift in their seats. Perhaps the better question is where you were when Jorel vanished. The sergeant snarled, fists clenching, but before he could strike back with words, the ship shuddered. The lights flickered, emergency sirens wailed, and then, darkness. A scream tore through the black, close this time in the very hall outside the chamber. Weapons were drawn, beams of light slicing through the dark. The door slid open to reveal a soldier sprawled across the floor, throat slit with surgical precision. Blood pooled beneath him, warm and fresh. The predator had killed within reach of them all. Chaos erupted. Some shouted for barricades, others demanded executions. Rorvac roared for silence, but his command was hollow against the tide of fear. Vector seized the moment, pointing at Cale with a trembling claw. See, it strikes when he is among us. He is the one. He must be restrained before we all die. Half the crew surged toward Cale, weapons half raised. Yet the human did not move. His face remained calm, his gaze sharp. He looked at each of them in turn as though memorizing their faces, weighing their choices. When he spoke, his voice carried over the din with unsettling clarity. You want a monster. You want something to blame. Careful what you ask for, you may find it. The words froze them more effectively than any weapon. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Vector lunged, seizing Cale by the front of his uniform, dragging him to his feet. The sergeant's eyes burned with triumph and fury. No more games, human. You will prove yourself now, or I'll get you where you stand. Cale's gaze met his without fear. Be careful, Sergeant. Once you tear open a cage, you cannot put the beast back inside. Rorvac stepped forward, torn between command and chaos, but the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Kale, still gripped by Vector, allowed a small, unsettling smile to spread across his lips. The crew, caught between terror and fascination, watched in silence. In that moment, every whisper, every rumor, every story of Deathworld predators seemed to gather around the human like a mantle. And then, for the first time since the killings began, Kale laughed, a quiet, low sound that chilled even the captain's blood. The predator they feared was no longer just a shadow in the dark. It stood before them, smiling. The cargo hold became their arena. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in pulses of crimson, shadows shifting with every flicker. The crew had gathered in a tight semicircle, rifles raised, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and grim resolve. Captain Rorvac stood at the edge, torn between duty and dread. At the center, held fast in Vector's grip, was Kale Marrik. The human's calmness in the face of so many weapons unsettled them more than any beastly roar could have. "End this," Vector barked, shoving Kale forward into the circle. "He's played with us long enough. Predator or not, we cut him down now before more of us die." His voice shook with anger, but beneath it was desperation. The ship's halls had become a graveyard, and the crew's morale balanced on a knife's edge. He needed a victory, a scapegoat, something to drive away the stench of fear. Kale steadied himself, brushing the wrinkles from his uniform as if the sergeant's shove was nothing more than an inconvenience. He looked around slowly, letting his gaze meet each soldier's. None could hold it for long. "You've been waiting for me to confess," he said, his voice carrying with eerie clarity through the chamber. "Waiting for me to flinch, to beg, to make myself small so you can feel large again. That's what prey does. But I am not prey." The words crawled beneath their skin. Several shifted uneasily, fingers twitching against their triggers. Rorvac's mandibles clicked in unease. He had seen humans fight before in skirmishes on wild colony worlds. He remembered the efficiency, the unshakable focus, the refusal to break. Vector snarled, pacing around Kale like a predator himself. "You admit it then? You are the one stalking us? The one breaking our ranks?" Kale's lips curved into a small, unsettling smile. "You've been hunting a predator that was already among you. I never hid. I never lied. I warned you, this was not instinct but intention." His tone hardened, each word a hammer blow. "And you kept looking outward when the danger was already within your circle." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Vector roared and swung a massive fist. It never connected. Kale moved with frightening precision, slipping beneath the blow, twisting the sergeant's arm with a crack that echoed across the hold. In the same motion, he shoved Vector to the ground, standing over him without so much as a raised voice. The rifles jerked up, but Kale's calm words froze them mid-trigger. "If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have seen me move. If I had struck as the killer in the dark, none of you would be here now." He let the silence settle before continuing. "What you fear is not what hunts you. What you fear is what I am. And you are right to fear it." Vector snarled from the floor, struggling against his broken arm. "Monster," he spat. Kale crouched low, meeting his eyes with quiet intensity. "Monster? No. Predator. The difference is choice. I could have slaughtered you all, but I did not. I restrained myself because, unlike the beasts you imagine, I decide when to strike. That is what makes humanity what it is. Not our strength, not our speed, our will." The words rippled through the crew, striking deeper than any weapon. They had seen his speed, felt the threat in his stillness, yet here he was, sparing them, controlling the violence within himself. It was more terrifying than any unseen beast. Rorvac stepped forward, his voice rough. "Then what have we been fighting? If not you, then what?" Kale's gaze shifted toward the shadows above, the ducts and crawl spaces where whispers had originated. "Something else. Something drawn to your fear. Something that thrives on chaos. I could smell it, hear it, long before you admitted it existed. But your panic blinded you. You made me your enemy while the real threat circled closer." As if summoned by his words, a metallic shriek tore through the air vents. Panels crashed down as a lithe, spined creature dropped into the chamber, its body slick with shadow, its eyes glowing like coals. The crew recoiled, panic threatening to break them, but Kale did not move. The predator sprang, claws flashing. Kale intercepted it mid-leap, his movements a blur of instinct and precision. He twisted, driving the beast into the floor with a crack of bone and metal. Its screech rattled the air, but Kale's grip was unrelenting, his expression calm even as the creature thrashed beneath him. With one swift motion he crushed its windpipe, silencing it forever. He rose, the corpse limp in his grasp, and let it fall before the crew. The emergency lights painted him in crimson, his silhouette standing tall over the fallen predator. "This," he said quietly, "is your monster. And this is why you whisper about humans. Because we are predators too. But unlike this thing, we choose when to be." No one spoke. The crew's rifles lowered, their fear mingling now with something else: respect, awe, dread. Even Vector, clutching his broken arm, could not meet Kale's gaze. Rorvac exhaled slowly, the weight of command returning to his shoulders. "We misjudged you." Kale turned, eyes steady. "No. You judged me correctly. You were simply unprepared for the truth of what that judgment means." He stepped past them, walking toward the exit as though nothing had changed, as though he had not just revealed the truth of humanity's nature. The crew parted before him, none daring to block his path. Whispers followed in his wake, not of suspicion now, but of something far more enduring. Legends spread faster than light, and those who survived would speak of the night they saw a human stand unflinching against the dark, a predator among predators. Captain Rorvac watched him go, a chill running down his spine. He understood now why the galaxy feared Deathworlders, why even the bravest species whispered their name with unease. It was not because humans were monsters. It was because humans decided when to be.